¿Qué onda, mina? Welcome back to Mons. This is my Japan travel series. For those of you who are new, this is where I talk about my first experience traveling to Japan. So don't worry, unlike my last video, I won't have two subjects again. Today is just going to be my raw personal experience going to Edogawa and Akihabara. So after the admittedly pretty crappy day that I had just yesterday, I was hoping today was going to be a little better. So I decided to start off my day by checking out Japanese TV, see what it was like. And of course, the first thing I see is news about the American election. No matter where I go, I really can't escape that thing. It was mid-election, so it's fine. No one really cared, except Japanese news apparently. So like yesterday, I started my day by getting out of the hotel and walking to the nearest station in Shinjuku. On the way, I found this really cool alleyway that looked more business oriented, but I really wish I could have explored it. I'm sure I could have found a mini boss in there or something. So in my last video, I told you guys that I had trouble getting the Suica card on my first day because I was really nervous. And what do you know? I was overthinking it. Again, surprise, right? I got the Suica card no problem, which meant I got to go on my very first train ride in Japan. So if you guys are in the lo-fi community, I'm sure you guys obsess over the aesthetic of Japanese trains. I am one of those people. So I really was looking forward to the train ride. And when I first went on, it was actually kind of a honeymoon feeling where everything, like the feel of it, the silence of it, looking out the window, kind of this whole vibe and aesthetic to it, I loved it all. So I eventually stopped loving the rides, and I eventually just reached the point where I just enjoyed the rides. Like they ended up being very relaxing, especially on very long rides where you just get to look out the window and no one else is in the cabin. So I wanted to go to Edogawa because there was a couple places I wanted to check out that were kind of food related, but I was just kind of naturally curious. I mentioned before that I wanted to see what some of the Pokemon regions were based off. Now I actually really ended up liking Edogawa, but I'll get to it after this. Now the first true thing I did was actually get to walk around Edogawa, but after a while I was kind of curious to try my luck again at ordering Starbucks. Since if you guys remember on the last day when I was at Shinjuku, I was too afraid to order Starbucks due to the amount of times I was failing at my Japanese on that day. So I felt a redemption arc was necessary. And yeah, I went to it and I liked it. My Japanese friend who I call Hirune recommended me that I get the seasonal flavors, and I probably agree. American Starbucks just kind of sucks with its flavors, and the seasonal flavors in Japan are just way better. I tried all of them that were very Christmas themed, and I loved every last one of them. So if you're in Japan, I say try Starbucks once and see if you like it. Now on my second day, I did get the infamous Nihongo Jozu. The location I wanted to go to for food was called Takoyaki Nagao in, of course, Edogawa. I went inside and it's just one guy doing all this takoyaki stuff. So the way I go and order food in Japan is I look at Yelp, I look at the menu, and I try to run the Japanese script in my head to think about how I'm gonna order this. Now, at first, I was actually struggling with the guy trying to communicate exactly what I wanted. So at this point, I was already kind of dreading making mistakes in Japanese again, but I kind of pushed through. And the more I pushed through, the more energy that kind of got to him, because after I'd say about a minute or so, I think he also really wanted to understand me, which is very nice of him. I eventually did get the order through and got the takoyaki. Unfortunately, due to COVID stuff, there was no place to sit down, so I had to just take it and leave. But when he gave me the takoyaki and was about to leave, he gave me, Nihongo Jozu. So I got that proud badge of honor. I forgot how I responded. I think I said something to the likes of Nihongo kara wakarimasu, like I only understand Japanese to an extent. I don't know, I'm probably saying it wrong. So now a new problem arose. Since eating when you're in the streets in Japan is considered rude, I had to try to find a place to sit down and eat. I looked online to see what was a non-rude option, and according to Google, they said it's okay to eat in the park. So I rolled with it anyways. That's what I'm going for. If that is considered rude, then you guys let me know. And the closest park that I found to the takoyaki place was the Alto Peace Park. And upon walking there and arriving there, that's when I really realized how truly beautiful Edogawa is. Because Alto Peace Park really emphasized the peace part in the park. So it should go without saying that I really loved Edogawa. When I arrived in that station, it felt so calm and peaceful. I really can't describe it. You know, in those moments in anime where everything just kind of feels very aesthetically pleasing. When I think about, like, I don't know, the high school animes with the very peaceful background art of like semi-urban areas in Japan, I think Edogawa really emphasized those kind of areas, especially in the train stations. Now, because of that, I actually didn't take too many pictures because I was so caught up in the moment and the beauty of this area. And when I think back to my entire trip right now, if I had to live specifically in Tokyo, I probably want to live in Edogawa. This place is both close to Tokyo, or at least close enough. It's kind of urban, so you're not completely secluded in trying to find local conveniences, but it's also not too urban where it's not, you don't feel the intensity that Shinjuku, Shibuya, or the kind of the Akihabara area kind of pulls. If you just want a place where you just want to walk, I think Edogawa is probably my favorite pick. So since it was my first day with complete transportation, of course I had to fulfill the ultimate weeb quota of getting to Akihabara. So I took a couple train rides from Edogawa to Akihabara naturally. Now here's a little tale. I remember I was in the train and there were mostly Japanese people, and I'll get into this later, and there were maybe a few foreigners here and there, myself included, of course. And then upon the train reaching Akihabara, there was this really round young man sweating and just shoving people by their elbows and kind of nudging his way out of the entire area at such fast speed that it kind of caught me off guard. And once he got off the train, the minute it landed, he just bolted out. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a greasier otaku than that guy. It set quite the precedence for Akihabara. Yet, ironically, I think he's the only guy like that I saw at Aki. But I hope he got everything he wanted. So my very first impression of Akihabara, which surprised me, was, once again, it kind of loops back to I over-researched Japan, so the things that didn't meet my expectations actually surprised me. And the thing that ended up surprising me was there actually wasn't that many foreigners there. Yet it was still crowded. When I looked up pictures of Akihabara, at least maybe, I don't know, 20 to 30% of the people in the background were foreigners, or at least non-Asians. So my expectation is, well, there's not a lot of foreigners, so it shouldn't be crowded. And I was going on like, I don't think I was going on a weekend or something. I think it was a Thursday or something that I went. Yet it was still so crowded. I looked to my side to like any restaurant or any chain or any place really where there was seating available, and it was all crowded, packed, or had a bunch of lines. And this is something you should also watch out for, which I'll kind of mention later, is when you're in Akihabara, you probably won't have a lot of places or areas to actually sit down unless you're either A, paying up a lot of money, or B, gonna be waiting in a very long line. And this is something I didn't learn later, but it's a good tip to know now, that if you want to sit down somewhere, just go a little bit outside of Akihabara. Don't try to find a place within, just keep walking away from it, and you'll eventually find at least a place with a couple spaces here and there. Okay, so enough about tips. What's my actual impression of Akihabara? Like, the weeb stuff. Well, unfortunately, I can't tell you something new where, like, yep, there certainly was anime and gaming stuff, and that's exactly what I wanted. Like, I don't have a very unique answer on that aspect. However, I mentioned in my last video that I like to take photos of weird spaces, so here's a few that I really liked. And funny enough, I think that was one of the parts I was looking forward to the most, was just these very weird stairway systems that are very narrow. I know everyone hates them, but for me, they were really very weird, and I like that. Oh, something else I actually wanted to mention as well, as far as my first day, is I was actually surprised how cheap some of the modern games were. Now, I've heard that Japan is pretty laid back when it comes to people reselling their games for cheaper. So you can find stuff like, I don't know, Dragon Quest V for what is essentially $10 or something. Meanwhile, in the States, that costs like $250 or something. But something like Super Smash Ultimate, which was a recent release, was actually had a pretty big price drop. And in fact, I remember I actually got my copy of Pokemon Shining Pearl, which was only, I want to say 3 to 4 months old, and I got it for like $16. That's really thrown me for a loop, that modern games were on sale. And of course, it was kind of cool just seeing a couple things from the side. Honestly, the most interesting things that I found were the non-anime stuff, kind of like the electronic things that I wasn't quite expecting to see. And that's really what I ended up purchasing most of my stuff for. Another point to bring up, because I can't keep my thoughts in one place, is Akihabara, in as far as how long it is, like, the actual road and how far it stretches among the metropolitan area, is actually not that big. What really makes it big is how tall it is. So don't expect to explore all of Akihabara in one day unless you really go there in the morning and just don't expect to get tired and just breeze through it. You can definitely do it that way. But there's quite a couple of things in Akihabara, especially if you don't really have a lot of expectations. If you want to fully explore Akihabara, and sometimes it is worth it because you find some really neat things in the back stuff, I say expect maybe 3-4 days maybe to fully explore Akihabara. And even then, I might be ignorant of a couple places that I missed. So, amidst being in late 2022, it did surprise me that I saw quite a bit of VTuber merch. I think in 2023, it's pretty safe to say that VTubers have kind of taken over Japan. But at this point, I guess I just wasn't expecting it because VTubers still kind of felt like a niche. And when I went to some floors in Akihabara, some were completely dedicated to like VTuber stuff. And even outside of Akihabara, I remember I saw a few Lawson ATMs that actually had like Hololive, I want to say it was bookmarks or stickers or something of that like, being offered just from the ATMs themselves. Now, it seems that at this moment, Fubuki, Marine, and Aqua were pretty popular, especially in the anime sections, but when you went into the gaming sections, it was very clear that Korone was the winner. In fact, I remember there was one floor in Akihabara where some guy had like a bunch of shrines dedicated to Korone and Sonic next to her, I guess. Now, I didn't go to any maid cafes. That's actually on a different day. I think that might be tomorrow, in fact. But I did go to a couple Crane Games areas just to kind of check it out. I didn't actually want to play it, but I just kind of wanted to see what it was like. And I made a huge mistake when I went to my first Crane area. Because I was taking photos of everything in Akihabara, I also wanted to take photos of some of the Crane stuff. And the minute the first staff member noticed, they immediately went up to me and said, "You're not allowed to take photos." And once again, second day in a row, I embarrassed myself by stressing out a staff member. Of course, I immediately stopped, but a tip for you guys is just don't film Crane stuff, apparently, without photo permission. If this day sounded busy to you, then yes, you would be correct. I was very busy, and I did not eat much besides that takoyaki in the morning. I went to a convenience store after the takoyaki place in Edogawa, and I brought like a bag of chips with me just in case I needed them. And I wanted to try out like Japanese snacking, and the covers often look pretty cool. I tried it, and I didn't like it. And I gave it a shot quite a couple other times. I'm a convenience store junkie, and I wanted to try out a bunch of as many snacks as I could while I was there. But every single time, I always felt that all the snacking stuff was inferior to all the stuff in North America. And for someone like me who grew up on Mexican snacking, this was extremely, extremely inferior to what I had. Which honestly, good on Japan. snacking is not good for you. But they did put all their effort into their actual food. So maybe Japan are actually the winners. And yeah, after I ate that bag of chips, I just knocked out like dead asleep. All that walking made me exhausted. I think I slept like at, 8:30 p.m., which is pretty weird for me. So that about does it for my second day. So let me think of any closing thoughts that I have. I guess to reiterate the point, Akihabara is a location I went more often than I thought, because it's way bigger when you actually start exploring the back areas, which I think are way better. In my next videos, I'm probably going to bring up specific stories I had with Akihabara, but I probably won't reiterate the same points I had from this first day. Let's see, what should be today's lesson? Oh, I know. Don't shove people in the Akihabara train. It's just Akihabara, dude. Chill. Alright, thanks for stopping by Mons. Don't get lost out there. またね。